Okay, guys, welcome to our elders meeting. We've got big decisions, hard decisions to make tonight. So let's start with a word of prayer. Earl, would you lead us, please, sir?
Our Father in heaven, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this time. And we know that you're all-knowing, all-powerful, always present, always loving, always forgiving. And in the conversations we have and the subjects we talk about, we just want to ask for wisdom and discernment and judgment and making decisions that are wise for the future of Christ Church, for our community, for the city of Irving. Be with us. Give us, again, I say, give us wisdom, discernment, insight, love, and grace. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen. Thank you. Okay, our purpose tonight is to decide not necessarily when we're going to come back live on our campus, but what are we going to do the next 3 weeks of May? And let me share with you some information about that, just so that we can all have as much information as we possibly can. First, we took the survey, and by the way, feel free to interrupt me at any time. If you have questions, we'll just keep the questions going as we go instead of waiting at the end. If you have questions or comments about any of this information, feel free to jump right in. You know that we took the survey of our church. We had 147 or so people respond, and we don't take surveys in order to make a decision like a democracy, but we certainly take the surveys to try to gauge the sentiment of our church. And in times like these, we certainly want to just know just from a broad perspective what people are thinking, and that does help us. So here's the demographics. This is the length of time that people have been at Christ Church. And it's not surprising that, we have a lot of people been there 9+ years and fewer people who are new in 2020. And so you can see that scale. And then the only other demographic question we asked was the age. And this is a pretty broad look at the age of Christ Church. So we've got 13 or so percent in their 20s, and we've got almost 30% in their 30s and 40s. And then we have 27% from 50 to 65, another 20% from the 10-year gap, 65 to 75, and then 10% of our church is 75 plus. And now that's the percent that answered the survey, but it's also a good representation of the overall demographic of our church. That's about what our church membership looks like. So we ask a lot of questions. There are 3 that are pertinent to this discussion. The first is that now that the governor has lifted the ban on church gathering, which best describes your attitude toward returning to a church worship service at Christ Church? And an overwhelming number, at least statistically, almost 60% of our church said, I will wait several additional weeks before I attend, or it may be quite a while before I return. And while it's true that there's about 30% that would return sooner, most of our church is fairly cautious, and that surprised me a little bit. And yet I think that's I don't think it's an unfair representation of the people I talk to. That's what I hear most. Here's that same question answered by ages. So you can see that obviously the older people get, the more cautious and conservative they are. And that only makes sense. They're at higher risk. And if you look at those 65 to 75, 65 and above, who are those that have been declared by the CDC and the governor's office, they would be discouraged from attending. You certainly see a heightened sense of that hesitancy. And so, so we ask another question, and that is, in addition to lifting the ban, what are other signals that you would want to see before you return? And they could check any or all of these. And over 50% said the number of cases near me is very small. That's germane to one of the other pieces of information I'm going to show you. And most social distancing recommendations have been lifted. We're certainly not there today, and it may be several weeks before we get there. And you can see even, 25% said local restaurant seating areas are fully open again with no restrictions. Those kinds of things are what people are looking for, and we're certainly not there today, and we don't anticipate we'll be there in the month of May. And then there was another question we asked that said, which of the following describe the attendance level at which you would be comfortable attending a worship service? And almost 80% of our church said half filled or less. And 32% said none of these right away. I basically said, I'm not attending at this time. And, that leads me to believe that there's still a heightened sense of caution. And then we asked, based on what you know today, which would you prefer of Christ Church? And an overwhelming number said continue to worship online at least through May. So look, this isn't, popular vote, therefore that makes the decision, but it does go into the sentiment of where people are. And when you've got 70% said, I hope we continue worshiping through May, and another 42% that says, I hope our church is really slow to return, that at least gauges the sentiment of Christ Church. By the way, they like the way we've reacted to the coronavirus, and so that's good to know. We're at least meeting most of their needs. Almost 84% said you couldn't have done more. We're very pleased. And so that's an endorsement of what we're doing, at least. So look, younger responders are more willing and eager to resume than older. We know that. There's no discernible outcry to return immediately like there is perhaps in the economic world where people are ready to get back to work and need to get back to work. We're seeing almost the opposite sentiment returning to live worship, because I think people are being fed and they're able to worship, albeit in a different way. So if there's sentiment, that would be cautious, slow, safe, and that's that. The second thing we look at are the data points. What we had been told and the feedback that we're getting from, for instance, Dr. Copeland and Cheryl Grove and those who are in the medical profession are saying we need to start looking for the county numbers to start to fall. So there's going to be a time when every day the numbers get less and they continue to get less. We would recommend looking at a 2-week window where those numbers are declining. We're certainly not there. This is the graph that starts on March the 3rd. That's when the first, March 11th, that's when the first case happened. And this says it goes to May 7th, though I updated it today based on yesterday's numbers. And we're at least seeing a flattening out of that, although we're still at about 250 cases, new cases every day. And so I think these numbers are relevant to the discussion because we're not seeing them fall, and we saw a steep rise. Now, hopefully a leveling out. We hope we don't see another steep rise, obviously, but I'm keeping track of these numbers every single day. And if you ever want to know what this graph looks like, you can email me and I can send it to you every day because I keep this graph. This is also up to date. They update this map every Tuesday and Friday from the Dallas County site. Those zip codes that you see in green have very few cases in them. Conversely, those zip codes that you see in orange have the most cases in them. And so green is almost none, yellow is a few, blue is a lot, pink is a whole lot, and orange is the worst. And that's really, this is an important chart because we're going to start hearing of churches that are opening up. And we're going to hear of churches that are opening up, for instance, on June the 6th or 7th, whatever that Sunday is. Lots of churches that I've heard of are pointing to open up on that day. And every church that I hear of that is opening that day is clearly and squarely in the green. The church is located in the green. Their members live in the green. They don't have people around them who are being tested positive. And if we were in the green and our members lived in the green, I personally would be more bullish to open. When you look at our population, we have 2 of those 3 where we have members live. And 25%, 1 out of every 4 families in our church lives in the orange. That's the worst of the worst. And 45% of our members live in orange or blue, which is the top half of positive COVID cases. That's almost half of our church that live in 061, 060, 211, and 23. I think that's 230. It might be 220. Let me see my own. Yeah, 220. So that's 45% of our church that lives in an at-risk place. Again, going back to the survey question that I asked, which is people around me are having less positives. We're not there. Our church is located in an orange area, and 23% of our members live there. 25% live in 2 of the 3 orange areas. So that's important to remember because people are going to see churches, hey, we're opening up next weekend. We're opening up on Memorial Day. We're opening up June the 7th. And they just have a different circumstance than we have. And I think that's, for me, that's the biggest point to be made. When you look at the recommendations, these are the CDC guidelines. The very first one is the facility in a community no longer requiring significant mitigation? And right now we would have to answer no to that question. Our facility is in a community that is requiring significant mitigation. So you hear churches across the state, and if you're in Rotan, Texas, open up. But if you're in Dallas County and your church lives in 75061, you might want to be more cautious. Again, this is Greg's opinion. This is my commentary, but CDC guidelines would not allow us to open up today. If you look at the governor's plan, there's 10 things that we would have to do. Oh, why? Okay, there we go. 10 things we would have to do. And these become just not impossible. Nothing's impossible. We're not the 12 spies of Israel, right? We're 10 of us saying, oh, the giants are too much. This is just rational stuff from an operational standpoint. So number one, because of the 6-foot distancing and the square foot of our auditorium, we would have to limit the number of people to 135 in one service. We'd limit the traffic in and out, both of the building and the auditorium. We would discourage physical touch, and every family would sit 6 feet away from every other family. But because of that 135 limitation, in order for us to invite everybody, we would have to have 6 services on a Sunday. We'd have an 8 a.m. service, a 10, a 12, a 2, a 4, and a 6. And the reason for the 2-hour gap between those services is because we would have to sanitize basically the entire building. Every doorknob, every handrail, every part of the bathroom, every seat, anything that anyone touches would have to be sanitized. And that's about a 1-hour window from being able to do it and then have people come back in. We would have to limit, or at least recommend that we limit, high-risk individuals like people 65 and older. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm uncomfortable with saying, hey, we're open up again, but those of you 65 and above, we'd rather you not come. There's something about having a worship service where you're telling people, yeah, some of us can come, but you can't. It seems odd, at least to Keith and me. We wouldn't be able to have children, nursery, or students. Likely won't have that until the schools, till the governor says, okay, it's safe enough for schools to open up. And so we'll likely won't have children's activities until August, September kind of time frame. Everybody would be encouraged to wear masks. So we'd have to buy masks and be able to provide those to any of those who won't be there. And I've had 4 guys in the last week that said, yeah, I think we ought to go ahead and open up. And I said, great. Are you willing to wear a mask? Oh, I don't want to wear a mask. Okay. What if you had to wear a mask? Yeah, I wouldn't come if I had to wear a mask. We're currently working on hand sanitizing stations at each of the doors as you walk in and the auditorium. That's not a killer. Screening is a killer from an operation and a volunteer standpoint. The temporal thermometers are hard to find. They're about $80 each. We counted, we would have to have about 10 of them. And then who wants to be the volunteer standing out, taking everyone's temperature? And then get this, deciding whether or not they can come into church or not. And how do you say, oh, sorry, you have temperature, you need to leave? And then what risk do you put your volunteers to be the ones that are going to stand there and get that close to someone who potentially is at risk? It's just tricky, at least for now. We would have to ask the screening questions that you're asked. If a plumber comes to your house, if you go into the doctor's office, you're being asked these questions. And if someone says, yes, I have, what do? Do we prohibit them? Do we just ask them to not enter, but give them the choice? Do we deny entry? How do we, who enforces this, and how do we make that decisions? Because of our restroom size, we'd have to limit in the 2 main restrooms, 3 men and 5 women. They still couldn't keep a 6-foot distance because of the narrowness of both of those restrooms. But there's another set of volunteers standing at a restroom door saying, sorry, there's already 5 women in there. You wait, and the next time someone comes out, you can go in. And it just doesn't feel very churchy, at least to me. We'd have to figure out what to do with communion. Certainly we wouldn't have a coffee bar, no bulletins, nothing in the seat back pockets. All the door handles would have to be propped open. We understand that. We'd have to sanitize the entire building. Doorknobs, tables, chairs, handrails, restrooms, all that has to be disinfected. We don't have the capability to do that today. Not impossible. We've already actually bought the material. It's just, we go through and train people and get either volunteers or pay someone to go in and spray down every part of that building like they do. If you've gone to Home Depot, you see them spraying down those carts. As again, not the end of the world, just takes some time to move through the entire building. We have to train all the employees and volunteers on appropriate cleaning, disinfecting, hand hygiene, and respiratory etiquette. That's a task. We have to have signage. We have to communicate limited touch. That's hard in a church is like ours that loves to hug and handshake and do all that. What do you do the first time one of our widows walks up and just says, "Give me a hug"? Not that they would, but they would. And then the final is just the theological issue. All right. So we recognize not forsake the assembly, but we also recognize that through the ages, people have assembled in various ways, right? They first assembled in homes and then went to the temple that they shared with the Jews and the Muslims, by the way. They all shared the same place. And they went and met. But throughout history, they've met in barns. We've met in fields. We've met in hiding. We've met in secret. We've met in giant auditoriums. We've met in small little church houses. And we've met in times of other disease. We've met with a level of social distancing. And families would gather together and they would worship and have a special day. We have a unique capability because we're still able to offer a corporate worship environment, even though it's online. And I would posit that the way we're doing it now is just as good a way as the way that we do it when we're live in the auditorium. Yes, we miss the physical touch, but if this is the right way to do it today for the safety of our church, I don't think we're going against the biblical mandate for us to worship. I think we're worshiping, albeit in a different way. The other thing that we're doing is we're able to continue to say as many times as we can that we recognize that worship isn't going into a church building for an hour on Sunday. We've said that for a long time. Now we're actually able to put it into practice and do it. That worship includes the time we spend giving our adoration to God on Sunday, but it also includes a food drive and helping our neighbors and going to the store for our parents and calling the widows and doing all these things that our church is so good at doing. And that too is our spiritual act of worship. So that's me now. I've gone on for 28 minutes. And I'm going to throw it open to you. Again, the only decision, we're going to have two pieces of discussion. The first is the next 3 Sundays, and then we're going to discuss when we think we might start looking. Keith and I recommend that we continue online only through the month of May, and that we meet again on May the 25th to decide and discuss about June, because that gives us another 2 weeks of data to look at as we move through June 7 and 14. 21 is Father's Day, maybe that's a good day that we target. But we can decide that on the 25th. So let me stop this and let's discuss the next 3 weeks.
I'd like to quickly go first. I think for me, I think it's an easy call, in my opinion, to continue online worship through May. I think that'd be the prudent option there. Then I would also recommend, I think would be a good idea, is to have a rolling 2-week decision-making process in which, since we have an elders meeting every 2 weeks, at the beginning of every elder meeting, we discuss whether or not it's a good time to open, the problems that are inherent with that, or perhaps hopefully the good news that it's not as bad anymore. And I think we're going to know when the right time is to open. But I would say making decisions on a 2-week rolling basis would probably be a good idea. That's my 2 cents.
Hey,
Well-
Ben, to your point, I do think it is going to be obvious to reopen. I think for all of us, I think we'll all at the same time come to a decision of, yeah, this is the thing to do.
I agree with that.
So coming from the perspective of two people that serve in the church that also have children, small children, I would say there's just no way we could comfortably be in that building. We can't be there with our children, because you can't expect your children to maintain social distancing when you don't have a parent to stand there and supervise with them when both the parents are serving. So, they wouldn't even be able to attend church with us, which I would not want that on the right. I mean, that's hard enough on a normal Sunday, with us not being able to sit in church with them. But with them not even be able to be in the building, that'd be really hard on us.
I don't see the logistics of this working until kids can go to class and most of us in this eldership can actually attend church. Okay. To me, just the logistics of trying to do 4 or 5 services and get volunteers, because I know for the children in particular, and when you look around at who's greeting and who's going to be standing at the door with thermometers, a lot of those people are your 60+ crowd that have volunteered. And so they're automatically off the chart, out of the question. And so I agree with Ben. I think, let's evaluate this, we'll know. But I think we're going to know when things are such number-wise that it is safe for all of our church to come back and not just a segment of our church.
I agree with what Richard said. I don't think there's a rush to come. I think Ben is right. It'll be obvious when to come back. The children are going to be a major deal, how we're going to address that and handle that. And that may be controlled by what you said, Greg, about when what's going to be determined about the schools, how they're going to handle the fall. So I think we should maybe look at encouraging our home groups to meet together if they feel safe. That's a decision they make in the homes.
Yeah, I concur. I think it would be even starting in June, it's almost going to be a logistic nightmare doing what needs to be done to keep it right. And I say, like he was saying, a 2 week, May's gone. We're not going to do that. No. Look at it in 2 more weeks and go 2-week rolling. And I'm to the point, and until the numbers start going down, we'll know. shouldn't even think about it because we're doing well. And what Ruth was saying, I know a few times there's some of us have gotten together, Anthony and Mary and Richard and Judy have gotten together on the back patio and broke bread. And that's what church is. We can still get together and be smart and social distance, but towards corporate, not yet.
Can we take what Ben said and put it in the form of a proposal and go ahead and vote on it? Right now, that seems like a good idea to everybody, the way we're hearing.
Yep. So what I hear is the decision that you guys are making is that we will not meet. We will meet online only. We will meet, but it will be online only through the month of May. That's May 31st. And then we're going to at our next meeting, May the 25th, we'll decide about June 7th and June 14th. We can let the church know about those 2 dates at that time. And then if we decide to be in, then that's great. We can communicate it. And if we decide that we're not going to be in, then we'll meet again on June, whatever that second Monday is, and we'll decide about the 21st and the 28th. And we just keep going. And
How much time are you going to need to prepare once we vote for yes? I mean, we can't say on May 25th, yes, and you go June 2nd and try to crank up. So we need to give you at least 2 weeks to make sure you get everything you can do.
yeah. To that end, here's what we're doing. We're buying the sanitation material today. We're trying to procure the thermometers in case we still need them when we decide to come back. The trickiest part is going to be volunteer coordination, and that's likely not going to be done in 1 week. And so what we're going to do, for instance, on the 25th, if we decide we're coming back June the 7th, that gives us about 10 days. And all Keith and I would ask for is at least 2 Sundays to be able to get what we would do. What Keith and I talked about is this. We would come back to you and say, okay, here's the first Sunday that we think we can pull this off. And ask, let's say on the 25th that you say, hey, we think we're ready to go. And what we would ask is, okay, can we come back with you in the next week and tell you, is that going to be the 7th or the 14th or the 21st? But knowing that once you're eager to say go, we're going to try to do that the first Sunday we can, but we don't think you're going to hold our feet to the fire to really go until we can assure you that it's safe and that we've got all the precautions in place.
Very fair.
I know that you can block doors from the outside and put signs up, but there's still fire exits with crash bars, so we're good there. So, if you need to lock a certain doors, and move everybody up one way, everybody has to come in this door and out this door, then that's good. I think that would, if that eases you and helps you out, you need in your planning, decide what you need, and we will work with you on that.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Was that a motion that Ben made?
Yes, sir. All in favor?
Aye.
Maybe the easiest way is, does anybody have any objections to that? Okay, cool. Guys, thank you for your wisdom. As always, it's invaluable to us, and you're good leaders of our church.